So initially, even I'm a bit of old school. So I still have board or a chalk in my room, or I'll have notepad or pens. I would like to write more. But then when I started using AI, I felt it is somewhere just making our brains dull, which it is. Honestly, if people are just giving a prompt how to write an email, then it is definitely
numbed them.
numbed them.
And
Yeah,
dumped
you can't
them.
even write
Yeah,
a statement. That's something is not very proud of, because we have been doing email etiquettes workshops back then. Now those workshops have gone irrelevant. I am just not there in this space to teach people, because I don't think I am the person who can teach. I am meeting so many professionals who are so skilled, who are so successful and accomplished. I'm just there to enable them, show them the light, and make them more confident about their own potential. So I would love to call myself a torchbearer more than a specialist who can train. In our culture, saying no is rude always.
Yeah.
And especially if a girl is saying no to something, it is even more rude. So that's how back then we were brought up.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Unbound with Mamta. Like the promise says, we are always here with yet another interesting profile, a human who is set to do something differently, a change maker or a change leader. And today I am absolutely honored to host and welcome Sonali on the show. Sonali, welcome to Unbound.
Thank you so much, Mamta.
Sonali Datta, you are L&D expert, doing many amazing things in HR and leadership, teaching people, instrumentalizing things, environments, and definitely leading with the impact that you are creating. Tell us firstly about yourself at a human level, your purpose, and what are you driven to do?
Sure. So, as a human, my purpose is big. I am just not there in this space to teach people, because I don't think I am the person who can teach. I am meeting so many professionals who are so skilled, who are so successful and accomplished. I'm just there to enable them, show them the light, and make them more confident about their own potential. So, I would love to call myself a torchbearer more than a specialist who can train. So at times I also call myself an artist when I walk into the workshop, because I'm here to just sketch your canvas beautifully along with you, so that the intervention is successful, and there's some meaning at the end of the workshop. So that's I am. So personally, yes, I am passionate about music. I'm a learned Hindustani classical vocalist, though I don't practice much into classical music now, but I'm still in touch with music. That's something I can't just go without. That's life. And I'm an avid biker. I am associated with a couple of motorbiking groups in Delhi NCR. Very fortunate to have lovely tribes around. There is a group called Moto Life, that's all women riders. Then I'm associated with Royal Enfield group.
Wow.
and fortunately, I got some opportunities to even ride with some 4Gs and had an amazing experience. So we have a lot of people around from that fraternity, and that's a great inspiration, riding with them.
Absolutely. What a fantastic start and an introduction. That's the reason I never introduce my guests. You all can do it so beautifully and passionately, but truly an honor to have you here. What I'd like to understand from you, that etching this space for yourself, we all don't really emerge with so much clarity just one fine day. It is always a journey. What has been your journey? How have you come to where you are today?
Journey wasn't easy, honestly, Mamta. Started with corporate, obviously worked with concerns like Larsen and Toubro and Swarovski India. Very different in nature though. So started my career with a consulting firm initially, and then moved to L&T, but always associated with people development profiles, and that has definitely created a base and upgraded my skill sets. But I think after my last assignment with Swarovski India, when I was leading the human resource profile for the India business, and then I heard my heart that there's a lot to do. It's just creating boundaries for me. my ideas will die, and I don't want to die with my ideas dying.
Yeah.
So I need to step out of this zone. I need to create such pedagogies and such interventions which will create meaning, because I could see the evolution. Even in L&D space, everything is changing, and with AI coming in,
Yeah.
I think the entire scenario changes. The pattern of L&D programs have changed so much in last 15 years. The kind of programs that we attended, and some of them were very, very boring, brutal to speak about. I felt that anytime when I am doing this, I'm not going to repeat this.
Yeah.
My participants are typically my co-partners in that workshop, because I feel every workshop is a workshop for me.
Yeah.
When I step in, I expect some learning outcome for me too. It's just not
Oh, is
I
it?
am talking.
Wow.
Yeah, every time, because I am working with leaders, I'm training managers, I'm training people who are quite experienced in the industry, more than me. So they come with so much of experience. I can just enable them with certain techniques and skills, and I can give them a direction.
Yeah.
So one of my emotional intelligence workshop, senior scientists, so it was a group of scientists whom I was doing this program of 2 days. So she told me a very interesting feedback. That was the first of a kind feedback that I got. She said, "आप ना बिल्कुल जामवन हो हमारे लिए." We knew, we never knew, we never knew we had so much of abilities. In 2 दिनों में हमने क्या किया, हमने कभी सोचा भी नहीं था. So that was like a eye opener for me too.
Beautiful.
So that's how I come across with participants who are quite senior in the industry. But it's a very interesting interaction, and I love meeting strangers and different groups. And every time I get a new project. So with corporates, I was working on monotonous activities, which was again quite draining for me as a personality. I'm adventurous. I like different projects, and I'm solving different problem statements with different clients. So that's the kick that I get when I'm into consulting.
Lovely, I'm sure. I mean, you're quite a handful. I'm sure how much they must be dealing with you at home. That's another discussion to be had. And now, of course, with, like you rightly said, AI. So is this like a constant learning and unlearning, or has it become challenging in a beautiful way or a annoying way? Like how are you treading this whole path?
I think it starts with an annoy, but it turns out to be beautiful when it is helping you out to save a lot of your time.
Yeah.
So initially, even I'm a bit of old school, so I still have board or a chalk in my room, or I'll have notepad or pens. I would like to write more. But then when I started using AI, I felt it is somewhere, just making our brains dull, which it is. Honestly, if people are just giving a prompt how to write an email, then it is definitely
numbed them.
You can't even write a statement. That's something is not very proud of. Because we have been doing email etiquettes workshops back then. Now those workshops have gone irrelevant because people are just prompting it to ChatGPT to write an email on behalf of them. But the difference is when you apply your brain and humanize that content, that's where your expertise lies. And that's where I think it is helping people. So people who know how to use it, it is a great technology. Yes. And it was always there. So yes, it's a boom right now, but AI was always existing in past. It only that we have many AI agents around us now.
And the application has become more visible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, specifically because you come from a people leadership and an HR profile, so would it be right to say that human is a resource? HR? How do you decode that?
Human, they create resources, I feel. They are, we just can't label them as resources. They are the ones who are inventing resources for organizations to function. Without people, there is no organization. So much to say, people are saying that AI will replace your profiles, but they are also building new profiles, in the organizations. If at all, it is replacing the mechanical tool-based profiles. And it's okay, but it's also giving you opportunity to grow in a different space, which was not very easy and common in past days. When we started our career, we knew that if this is my profile, I will retire with this profile. I would have not even have that courage to explore a new profile. But this is giving us that space to unlearn something and learn something new and see a space where I can be better. And I see this a lot when I do psychometric profilings. When
Hmm.
people come and they share their natural style of behavior, when they see that fact on sheet, they say, "मुझे पता भी नहीं था कि मैं ऐसे हूँ," because I was living a perceived personality since so many years. Because this was my profile. I was supposed to be a very planned and an organized person, but naturally I'm not. So I think this is giving that space for them to rethink, to realign their ambition, their interest, their passion. So actually it has staged and it has moved in a way that earlier people used to work for basic necessities, roti kapda makan. Then people used to work for their career. Now people are exploring what they really want, and if they really want to work or do something of their own.
Yeah.
So it is very different. The
Yeah.
needs have changed.
So 2-3 couple of, I think, very, very well said, and I would want to go a little more further in depth of it. Firstly, when you get into a work, like when you develop your own work and when you make your own space, when you are the first mover or the torchbearer of that particular area, practice, expertise, whatever you may call it, there's no precedence.
No precedence.
So, how do you even get to that scratch board and say that this is what I've identified for myself? So, how does it dawn on you? I just like to know the process a little. So, I know I can connect the dots. I can see that, of course, you're a more dynamic and a less boring and a more enthusiastic and an exploratory person. But creating this space for yourself in this way, how did you really etch it out for yourself? How did that clarity, if I may ask, dawn on you?
I think pedagogy. My first
Okay.
workshop that I did for an European firm, and that was my managerial effectiveness workshop. That was without PowerPoint.
Okay.
So that gave me a lot of confidence when I got the feedback, and I felt more comfortable not at all looking at slides and talking to humans, because we had healthy interactions. It was activity led, very experiential in nature. People didn't realize it's a 2-day workshop. People were excited talking about it. I felt the energy in the room. I enjoyed, because I would also want to experience something like that. And unfortunately, we always attended such programs in our younger days, which were backed by PowerPoint slides or a lot of information, because we are not processed that ways.
Yeah.
As humans, if you see, we are hooked to a slide scientifically only for 6 to 7 seconds.
Yeah.
How we are hooked to reels? Hardly 30 seconds or 60 seconds. That's human nature. So why would a person be hooked to a PowerPoint slide for 8 hours? And when there is already a trainer who's experienced enough to enable you with knowledge or with more technology or techniques, then why do we need such slides? So I think that was the change that I felt, and it gave me a lot of confidence. Yes, there are workshops which we do hybrid, and still we do it because there are certain information, certain videos that we use on the screen to make it more engaging. But I think pedagogies have worked very well for me. Every time I put my brain only towards pedagogy, because content is available everywhere, Mamta. All the trainers would have the content, the similar content, because the science is same behind the behavioral skills. So how I am presenting that science and how I am making people more enabled to use that science in their workplace, that should be my art.
Somewhere in your profile and in your work, you've mentioned that there's a play of a lot of psychology in your work, right?
Yes, it
so,
is.
Yeah. So just uncover a little that part of our.
Everything starts with psychology when we are talking about human behavior. See, for example, if we are there to train assertive communication to a group, it is psychology. And I always connect psychology also with how we are wired since our childhood. There are a lot of cultural impacts.
Right.
In India, you'll find assertive communication is not a very common skill. It is an acquired skill, and acquired only to those people who are working. The non-workings are still facing difficulty being assertive, and especially women.
Especially women, and especially saying no to things, having your boundaries.
Because in our culture, saying no is rude always. And especially if a girl is saying no to something, it is even more rude. So that's how back then we were brought up. So that's not a natural skill. It has a lot of cultural differences. When you train people from Europe or US, they are naturally very assertive, and they will come across with that skill being a very common skill, common communication skills. So I always connect, and my team always do research around how cultural and psychological connections are established, because it is important for us to customize our content every time when we are walking into a workshop or doing an interventions. And during leadership interventions, it is psychology led. We cannot do anything non-scientific. Everything has a scientific evidence. We work through models, we go through a lot of frameworks and research papers to establish and design an intervention. Because leaders are already coming with practical exposure.
Right.
They are talking business. They want business outcomes. So we need to talk about outcomes rather than just talking about skill building with them.
Yeah.
So
Give us some example. This really does sound very fascinating, and I want an example with respect to a woman leader, and then vis-a-vis, the male counterpart as well.
So by example, so women leaders are definitely dynamic, and a very a good example I'll tell you. So since last year, I know a woman who was exploring new roles, and this year by April, I hired her, and she said that I am in my second trimester. Do you think I'm still employable?
Oh,
I said, of course you are. Your brains will be the sharper than ones who are not in their pregnancy phase, because you will be the most dedicated resource. So I don't mind at all hiring you. It's only a break that you will take. I'm sure you will come back because you are clear about your ambition. So it's okay. That break is needed. It's scientific. It's logical. Everyone has gone through that phase. So I totally support, and you can join in. And she's contributing beautifully in my team. This is about a person who's not at a leadership level, but someone who's clear about her ambition. Similarly, women leaders, they for them it's very, very complex, because the women, after work, going back home and being at an entrepreneurial role is a very different scenario.
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis a man going back from work to home is a very different scenario.
Absolutely.
Right? We have created complexities around us, but fortunately we have supporting ecosystem at home also. A lot of families, your partners, your in-laws, everyone is supportive enough that yes, a woman should live her ambition. And I try to convey this message larger in every workshop, and specifically when there are workshops around women and for women development, and I tell them that I don't do only specific to women workshops, but if it had to be, especially around Women's Day, there are a lot of clients who come to us and say that do these workshops for them. It should be different, it should be empowering, energizing. So we'll do all that, but this content is very similar to what I'm doing it for men or women. It's not gender specific, because as a professional and by psychology, it's only that our scenarios are different culturally. The brain development is same. So there is no difference in there. So I don't really differentiate that ways. I would in fact enable you with more rationale how you can function in your ecosystem. Be more assertive at home and at workplace both. So for a women leader, yes, there are complexities at work also. And this is global. This is not an Indian scenario.
Yeah, actually, this reminds me of a couple of these instances that we keep listening, like Indra Nui's very, very popular anecdote about the day she was appointed. I think not the CEO, COO or CFO. And her mom still called her like 9 o'clock at night and told her कि वो milk तो तुम लाई नहीं और तुम्हारा पहला responsibility है कि तुम घर में दूध लेकर आओ.
Exactly.
And Twinkle Khanna saying on one of the occasions that I'm all prepped up in my deep, maxi gown and all set to go for an award function. And all of a sudden the cook comes up and says, Didi, khane mein kya banana hai? In my stilettos and all. So that's, but what I also want, and this is not specific to India.
No,
this is a very, very global phenomena. So I'd like to also understand that it's not about fault finding, but where is that even women are themselves responsible for this? And likewise, if there are limiting belief and things that men are very specifically sticking to, and I'm sure you would know that more than any of us, then what is that they need to break out of too?
It's a fact.
Yeah.
Women are limiting self-belief. 46.4% of women still think that the self-confidence is the biggest reason which is, drawing them downwards after a career break. That's their number one reason, that they have a low self-esteem, low self-confidence. So that's what they're fighting with. And again, I'll tell you, it's not because they want to believe it, but it's how they have been brought up. So I've trained a lot of women from plants, where they've been working in a very remote situation. They've come, maybe they, and I've also trained women who, for the first time, they've got the education and the degree of engineering, and they've come out and they're working. So those kind of women, just think about them. How would confidence be very common to them? Because just to step out of their house was the first decision of their life, and to live in a plant and in a township where it is a plant and 80% of the population is men, in these industries, it's very difficult for them to even open and ask that, is this my task? Because mostly they're dealing with their managers who are male. So we have come across in our program, coming to us, and they are coming after the workshop also, connecting with us individually on one-on-one basis, that how to deal this situation, how to even talk about it. So we took them through those techniques and steps, that how can you do that, how can you talk about it, how can you be more assertive and asking questions, and just don't limit your self-belief that you are not confident enough. So that's the biggest fight they're still fighting, and it's common across the globe. It's just not in our country.
Absolutely.
Yes, of course the percentages might be higher, but still things are changing. I have worked in an industry where, when I joined L&T, I was the only woman on the floor of 250 engineers. So I have been into that situation. I have seen how we need to excel, but it's up to you. And we are playing a big role in just diminishing our ambition, because we are not talking about it. It's being fearless, it's being courageous about your ambition, and you have to own it before you even be enough courageous to talk about it. If you don't own it, you are confused enough what I want from life, then you cannot take steps. Choose your mentor wisely. See from whom you can seek advice, who can help you, and take as much assessments that you want to take about yourself if you're not very clear. And I think the best mentors are your parents. Talk to them. They are the ones who know you in and out. So talk to them like your mentors, not your parents. That tell me where I can excel, what are my natural strengths, or which are my natural demotivators, where I should not go. So they should talk to their parents, talk to their best of friends who can help them, and seek a professional mentor if they really need.
So has this inspired any idea, thought, or story within you? Then do not hesitate. Just write to me at Unbound with Mamta, that is UNBOUNDWITHMAMTAA @gmail.com. वो आपकी अपनी स्टोरी हो सकती है, या किसी ऐसे इंडिविजुअल की स्टोरी जो आप सुनना और देखना चाहते हैं अनबाउंड पे। हमें लाइक, शेयर और सब्सक्राइब करना बिल्कुल मत भूलिए। अनबाउंड विद ममता एक ग्रोइंग कम्युनिटी है, एंड वी आर ड्रिवन टू डू more and more by giving content that you want to hear and listen. So keep coming back for more and more. Moving the needle to the men's side of the story and leadership, what are the things that are really changing at that level? I mean, limiting belief to maybe being empathetic leadership. What is that you are seeing that's happening on the block, or where they need to do a whole realignment or redesigning?
I think it has become more consultative now.
Okay.
And when we were doing these women workshops, and we used to always loop in their managers also on day 2. When we spoke to them, they were very highly talking about their potential women employees and team members, and they expect them to come out and present during meetings, take part, take lead. So their challenge was that they are not taking initiative. We are here to give that platform. So there was a silent gap which was supposed to be filled. So men leaders or women leaders, I think they have moved towards a consultative leadership, where they're consulting their team and they're giving them opportunities. And that's how it should be now. That what should we do as a team? Of course, I bring in a lot of expertise, but I would love to hear your point of view here, your ideas, and and leaders should just not hear the ideas for the sake of creating that aura and environment that, oh, I'm very, friendly with you, and I'm giving you space to talk. There should be a genuine interest in their ideas. Only then I think the team sticks around. So that's the gap they need to bridge. A lot of leaders do invite people, hear them out, but they do what they want to do. But the consultative partnership or leadership will only get accomplished if the team's inputs and outputs are evaluated rationally. That, okay, yes, of course, the ideas can go well, the ideas can go bad also, because they come with little experience as compared to the leader. But there has to be a rational to and logic to what they are saying, and what can be better, and why this is not being chosen as an idea and why the other idea has been chosen. So if you state that fact as a leader, I think then it's good. And also being more visionary about the overall growth and goal, and making your team realize that what is your contribution in this growth engine. Where are you contributing with respect to revenues? That is very important. If leaders just say that, this is your work and just do it, people are not going to stick around, especially this generation.
Yeah. Coming to
they
this,
want purpose, they want value.
Yes.
Back then, yes, of course, we were very sincere, not even to ask questions around this.
Yes.
But I think ask as many questions.
Yeah.
And good that they are. I will not say that they are disabling us or they're not working. Rather, they are forcing leaders to answer difficult questions.
Yes.
And that's the thing which we were running around since ages now. We were always running away from difficult conversations, especially feedback giving or delegating tasks or planning for them. So these are very difficult performance appraisals.
Yes. Yeah, that brings me to and my next, actually you read my mind. My next question was in that direction, that what about the Gen Alpha, Gen Z, millennials? Of course, we've been very sincere with our work, but it's a different generation, and for them, like you said, the motivator is just not money. They definitely need to see that this is worth my while, or this is worth my time. Is it enriching me? Is it giving me any purpose? How are you seeing things pivot, and what is the kind of leadership you see emerging with this kind of generation and mindset?
I think leaders are struggling for sure. I have a lot of my friends who are working with MNCs, and they are struggling how to manage them.
Yeah.
Managing them is not impossible, but you will have to be consultative from the day one and be more collaborative. Because you have to value what they are bringing in, and be very clear and structured about what is expected out of them from day one. And that is something which I have been talking about many years, Mamta, in the corporate also. When you're setting goals for your team, be very clear about the expectations, so that mid-year you don't tell them that you never did this. And it should not come as a shocker. So that's why I said this generation is forcing the leaders to be more iterative and more consultative from day one, from day zero, in fact, from the day when they're hiring them. So before even joining, that week of gap when they join, I think they expect that it should come, all of the process and even discussions and my role should be clarified to me even before I join in. Because they are there to seek value. Of course, there is lack of discipline in certain areas. I hear a lot of complaints from leaders that that there's no time consciousness, and that's not there. Maybe time boxing is not important in their life, because they are looking at a productivity. They're more productive, or they are looking at their work to get finished. Like they're not process oriented, but they're result oriented. That we can put it like that, because back then, if somebody is working for 10 hours or 12 hours in an office, that person was the productive one. The person who's leaving on time was not that productive. That was a very clear definition in organizations, but now it's not that. We work on hybrid mode. We are making them more accountable, and if they're working from home or from a beach, the work should happen, and that is what they're coming with.
Totally. No, so I hear you, and in fact, these things that we've been, I mean, there have been latest instances like E&Y what happened to that girl and everything. So, mental health
Yes.
has become quite a core of discussion and everything that they're putting. In
Mm.
fact, I remember when I started my own agency, and this person who's just not even a year into the professional experience and just freshly postgraduate, the first conversation she had with me was, I hope there's a work life balance in your organization. And I said, I'm the only founder. I don't think I'm a good example of work life balance. But so while this may be all in theory, but how does a present leader, like a millennial leader, really tread through this? Because he's actually been at a squashing at both ends. So how justified is that? As a parent, he's trying to
Trying
figure
to
things
manage.
out. As a leader, he's trying to figure things out. And sometimes you have to tell them that, listen, you are my colleagues and you're not my children. So you cannot be
Exactly.
throwing a fit over on me and comparing things like that. So
Yes.
how do you really, I mean, are there ways that you guys have designed? Are there mental psychographic ways to map it and put an end to it, or analyze it and do something about it?
See, we are also not, we can't just focus only on mental health, we feel. And in our workshops, we also talk about physical health. You have to build that endurance physically to be in that zone at workplace and at your home both. You can only balance your life when you're physically fit and mentally fit. It cannot be, the mental health cannot just happen with antidepressants and not having work around. It is about that endurance that I think and I have learned that from my parents. I've seen my parents, how they were at their age, at their 40s, and how we are.
Yeah.
So I take a lot of inspiration from them.
So this is not a personal jab or this thing on any of the generations. We're just having a conversation to just filter this whole thing out, that where we are stuck. Like in a very joking way, some of these stand-up comedians, they sometimes say, right, that we are that generation जिनके पेरेंट्स को लगता है इनको कुछ नहीं आता है, इनको कुछ नहीं पता है, और उनके बच्चों को भी यही लगता है, but they both come to us and seek us for
We are the sandwiched
we are the
ones.
sandwiched ones. So
There
I
are
think,
so many memes and reels on millennials.
yes.
Poor millennials getting thrashed from both the
Yeah,
generations.
yeah. So I think it's just that millennial in me who's talking about it.
I totally resonate with you.
Yeah. And no, so the inquiry just is to understand that in the times to come, simple things like waking up on time, power of discipline, power of balance, clarity. Of course, we can see. Of course, there's speed that has got into our systems, and time per se. When people are saying that we don't have time for this, what I see is that there's so much automation. There's Zomatos and Blinkits and Ubers and Urban Company for everything. And then you say you don't have time. And what we are doing with that time is we are just doom scrolling.
Exactly. We are not managing it.
We are not managing it. So do you also believe or resonate with the fact that these little things like just waking up on time and being disciplined will be the superpowers of a human?
It is always, it has been always.
Always.
If you see your elders and the previous generations, I think discipline and time was their weapons to execute those superpowers, and it still exists.
I would want to know a little more about your work under your organization, the frameworks that you have created, and there's something very interesting that you do with music specifically. So just decode that whole thing for us, please.
Sure. Yeah, of course, the name is derived from music. It's a cappella. But a cappella is to do with people jamming together and performing together without instruments. So for us, the inspiration in the process becomes where you have minimal resources, but you still have to synchronize and harmonize to reach towards a goal. So that was the inspiration while having this name. And I always say proudly that I have a beautiful a cappella of humans with me who are working towards a bigger goal, solving different problem statements for every client. So whenever we meet a client, of course, the starter is, what's the name? A cappella, what do you mean by it? So when we explain, they resonate. Yes, that is how an organization should function. So team dynamics, team effectiveness, working together, all of this is an a cappella, you would only function and sound beautifully, and it will be a performance of an organization when these individuals are connecting dots
Right.
or they're synchronizing.
Right.
They are feeling the importance and significance of interdependence. They're not working in silos. So in every workshop of ours, be it leadership, be it any communication skills or basic skill set workshops or going to team buildings, it is always about the interdependence theory. So it is not a theory, it's the practical life that we live. And in our families also, without each other's
Yes.
partnership, collaboration, we cannot function. It's an ecosystem that we create, and that's the important part. So our process starts from scratching out that why do we even want to do this program. At times they've told our clients that there won't be any value if you just do this part, because this will be just taking your checklist. And this is what I hated during my corporate life, that there is a training calendar and I'm just ticking the checklist. People are not interested. There is no value which is driven. There is no meaning that I'm making at the end of the workshop. So why even plan that and waste the energy and time of the trainer and the participants? So rather I would design something which is meaningful in those 8 hours. So giving so many of techniques and models in an 8-hour workshop is definitely not our style. We try to focus on 2 to 3 important significant pieces in the gap areas which the client tell us that, okay, this is not working for us. I said, what do you want to achieve by bringing these 30 people together? First tell us. So we ask these questions right away. What is the ROI that you're seeing by spending so much after, or rather go for, we've told them that, it will work like a journey. One day I will not be able to make any magic in your life. Don't expect my trainers, my facilitators or coaches to make your life beautiful in just 24 hours. It won't happen. It is a journey. You will have to wait for a behavior change.
Absolutely.
It happens in phases. It's very transformational. And when we work, that's why in a recent video of mine, I've told that, these interventions only fail because they're designed like a learning event. They're not designed like a business transformation initiative. It is a transformation, take it by that. Even if you want to develop a very basic skill set called presentation skills, go in phases. Do capsule workshops.
Yes.
Just spend 3 hours a day or 4 hours with us. And then we give them action learning projects so that they apply that technique right in there when they're working, so that it doesn't happen that after the workshop, tata bye bye, the tools that you gave me, I forgot the learning handouts which you gave me, I'll put it in my drawer. So I hate giving any learning handouts in my workshop. We don't really do that. We make them do journaling. That's a very powerful tool we've realized over the time, even during leadership interventions and during workshops. So that's the process we follow. Music is part. So music wellness is one of the initiative that we try to work around, because it is very scientific. I think the physicist C.V. Raman has done a lot of research on the wavelength and even the resonance between the ragas that we have, the music in western part that we have, and what impact that creates on the body. So that has been a great initiative by our organization, de-stressing with music. So we don't really want somebody who knows music. It's totally fine somebody who's just walking in the room and is coming across to the notes for the first time. But we would start building an initiative, and we start that in the entire program with introducing them with little exercises, musical exercises, which help them de-stress, which help them open up, help them also uncover what was missing in them, unbox themselves, be more interactive, be more free, creative, create something of their own, compose. So we give them certain materials which help them to, compose a music and music for life. So that's the initiative, and we are still researching on it. In fact, I was doing a course with Berklee School of Music USA for around this only, music wellness, to understand. And there also, interestingly, one of the coaches was a Carnatic musician. So it was scientific led, and I did all my research on my own, that how we can, create such initiatives for corporates and for non-corporates so that they can improve their personal effectiveness more. So music definitely has impact on our nerves. A lot of researchers say that it calms your BP. It also helps in, and if you see our Indian ragas, how they are built are, they have prahar. So every hour of the day
Day.
have a different rag because
Yeah.
they are linked directly to our moods, and it is all scientifically proven.
Yeah.
There's no non-scientific nonsense going on around
Mm.
music. So I felt the strength of it, and that's why we designed something which is to do with de-stressing with music.
Yeah.
They come together, they jam together, they synchronize, they build an a cappella, and they leave the room with that little takeaway in their head that this is something that I can do it and I can de-stress. So little techniques that we tell them
Yeah.
to de-stress. Even I think a lot of during my pregnancy, I felt that every month had a raga to hear.
Uh-huh.
There are applications which are working on it.
Uh-huh.
So it's again science.
Yeah, beautiful. I love the way how you've integrated that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to create something which has not been fathomed about till so far. But tell me, just as a last thing, that is, it's humans at the end of the day, right? And we always feel that, oh, we have done this, we have done that, we have put in this framework, we have put in this psychology metric. So are there things still beyond that are to be discovered and are still you are still discovering? And where does this beauty and this soul journey take you further?
Yeah, so like I am a psychometric assessor. I've done a lot of profilings. I sit with people and make them understand what's the report. But I think people change for people. I truly believe in that more than frameworks, because howsoever structured report I will hand over to a person who is highly accomplished. When I sit with that person and see them, not the disc report, but them, I think then the change starts significantly happening, because then we are talking human. So I have always, in my 18 years of career, I have holded relationships always over these frameworks and reports. I built that relationship and trust because these reports are vocabulary and data and facts for me. It will be useful only when I gain the trust of the person with whom I'm coaching or with whom I'm sitting across. Because competence is very common, but permission is not. It's rare. So a lot of the people, I have trained so many people who are so capable of skill sets. So it's not about building skills, of course. It is just not skill gap. It is about taking that permission, executing that permission to have that place where I can do this. So people are still seeking that permission from their managers, parents, spouses, peers, that if I can apply this at work. Because you cannot put permission in a 9-grid box. So but that's the real variation in that box. That's the variable which we need to work with. So I feel more than these reports, it is definitely that human connect that works to execute these frameworks.
Yeah. So very well said. I think that's a beautiful way where we end this episode, but the discussion goes on, and I think you've just tickled the surface is what we can say.
Yes.
But truly wishing you unbounded success, and thank you so much for being so unfiltered and candid about your journey and purpose with us, and wishing that more and more people come, confide, learn, grow, and there are many more journeys to be unraveled with you.
Of course.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
so
you so
excited.
much.
Thank you for this opportunity, Mamta.
It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you. Keep coming back.
Sure. Lovely interacting with you.
Absolutely, likewise. Thank you so much for being there on that other side. But that other side is never complete till the time you drop in your comments and tell us what did you learn and like about today's episode. And definitely give us a heart, give us a like, and give us a share. Let's keep unbounding together. Thank you for watching this show till the end. I hope आपको कुछ बहुत ही valuable insights मिली होंगी. अब एक काम करिए. Do not forget to press that like button. Done that? Now subscribe to this channel ताकि आपको और नई information और ऐसे बहुत से beautiful episodes देखने को मिलते रहें. And please share this episode with that person जिसकी जिंदगी इस conversation से बदल सकती है. Let's keep unbounding together.